astronaut street, and I'm glad that I came here on time and I listened to his presentation as well. What he has offered all of us is really a scientific perspective, weighted quite a bit on the exploration from a scientist's viewpoint. Now, what I'm going to share with you is an experiential report I'm going to try and give you. And I must put a context to that it has. You can't hear? Okay. No, the feedback starts. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the context to that is that 40 years ago, it's been 40 years, and what I'm going to share with you is dated in that sense. I have not experienced the American way of training because I flew with the Russians 40 years ago, but I do believe that there are some aspects which could not have changed much, primarily because the human physiology has not changed. And the only thing that has degraded over time is our outlook. I think we have become a lot less tolerant of each other, which is quite on view with this social unrest which is going on around the globe, and which we keep seeing those ghastly pictures on our media channels. So Rumsfeld had also mentioned and given a kind of a philosophical outlook by asking the question, where have we come from? But I think for us as a species, it's more important to talk about where are we going from here, especially in the domain of the experience of my particular space flight. So I'm going to first go over some bits of how the training was done in my case, and why those particular tools were used to train us, and for what reason. So there are major differences which are there between life on Earth and life in space. Is one, gravity. In fact, the lack of gravity, and how do we train, and what are the problems that gravity per se starts affecting, how does it affect the human body? It's on two levels. One is that you are accelerated from velocity 0 to a velocity of something like 7 kilometers per second by the time you are established in orbit, and it takes precisely about 8 minutes to reach that speed. So all you mathematical whiz kids can calculate the acceleration which happens during this transit, and the g-forces which are imposed on the human body during the ascent till the time you reach your orbital altitude. Now, the problem with G is not especially for, I would say, for pilots, fighter pilots like myself, because we are used to handling up to 9 times the force of gravity while we exploit our aircraft, especially the latest, shall we say, the Mirage 2000 or the Rafale. But the difference again is that these aeroplanes run out of energy if you are continuing to maneuver at those G forces. So therefore, we are used to handling that, but for shorter periods of time. Whereas during a launch, although the G force is a bit less, but it lasts for about 8 particular minutes. And we are to lie down on our back, facing the sky during launch. So guys, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Because when I get closer, the feedback starts. Right. We are lying down, and as the ascent begins, the G forces start building up, albeit to about half the value of what we experience in the Mirage, but it's for a longer time. So the force is in Gx, from the chest to the spine. So it is as if there's a weight you place on your chest, and the result of that is that the chest wall gets pressed towards the spine. What that does is, it reduces the area for your lungs to expand, and therefore breathing becomes difficult. And how do we overcome or prepare for this contingency? We prepare by spending time in a centrifuge. It's a centrifuge. I mean, the room is perhaps slightly bigger than this auditorium, and it's circular in shape. And there is pivoted. The centrifuge is pivoted right in the middle of the floor, and there's a long mechanical arm, and the capsule is placed at the end of that arm, and it's articulated on gimbals. So when it is stationary, it is facing like this, but as the centrifuge goes around its pivot, it goes faster and faster, and the centripetal force makes the capsule go to the out. And the analogy which I can give you is that if you are driving fast in a car and you take a sharp turn, you get pushed to the opposite side. Now that is, your body is feeling the G-force from the left to the right. In this case, once the capsule, which is on gimbals, goes at the same plane, you start feeling the weight on your chest. So you replicate the same kind of situation which you would be facing later during your launch, and that's how we train. So the physical training prepares us because we build up our upper body muscular tone. We breathe out and lock our pectoral muscles and artificially create that area for the lungs to expand, so that you don't gray out and you don't black out during the ascent. So that is one, G. Second is vestibular. There are vestibular dysfunctionalities that happen if you fly into space because of the lack of gravity. And why that happens is that on Earth, like we are standing, I'm standing, all of us, we don't realize how important gravity is in our lives. We are standing like this, and we are able to, the vestibular system within our medulla, that just ensures that we don't fall. If you start leaning to one side, you get a feedback that you look straight in yourself. So this is what the vestibular system does. But when you're in space, and when there is no gravity, firstly, there is no need to stand vertically. There is no need because there is no floor and there is no roof. You don't fall. Whereas if you lean here on Earth, you will fall and hurt yourself. So that's the difference. But what happens is that the semicircular canals which are in your ear, they get over-exerted, and we need to condition them, rather decondition them, I would say, so that they don't react. And when the semicircular canals and the fluid in the circular canals go sloshing about, you start getting symptoms of space sickness, which is not much different from air sickness or travel sickness. So, because you're not vertical all the time and you're moving around, so you start feeling sick because the semicircular canals have not been conditioned and prepared for this kind of gravity environment, lack of gravity environment. So you need to train for that. You need to train your semicircular canals not to be so sensitive. So, and that training was given to us on a chair. It's called the vestibular chair, which we rechristened, and we said that it's a torture chair, because you're going to sit on that with a harness, and the chair is rotating around its axis, and while the chair is rotating, the trainee is supposed to move his head from left to right, shoulder to shoulder, forward to back. These three directions are precisely the alignment of your semicircular canals. And so by doing this, what happens is that you get used to, initially you don't feel too good, but as the training progresses, you have your semicircular canals know to the feedback which they get is not so much. And the third physiological problem is that there are fluid shifts which happen when you get into space. Again, due to lack of gravity. When we are on Earth, the heart is pumping against gravity, is pumping blood which is going to the head. Now, you remove gravity, 8 minutes later there is no gravity, but nobody's told the human body that you are now in an environment where there is no gravity. So the heart continues its good work and continues to pump at the same old rate. So there is too much of blood which gets accumulated in the head. So your face swells up, your tongue swells up, your taste buds change, your semicircular canals are gorged with blood, and whatever desensitization which have taken place during training, some of it is lost. But again, the human body is such a wonderful organism that there are pressure receptors on the base of the neck, and they send the feedback to the heart that you really don't need to work so hard. So the heart rate drops, and your pulse rate drops, and you come to a new normal, much lower blood pressure, much lower heart rate, and therefore you get adjusted to a zero gravity environment. And so these are the challenges which you prepare for when you reach orbit. Because you need to be functional. It's such an expensive kind of work which you're doing that it really won't do that if you reach your work site and you're not feeling too good, and your time is up and you're going to come back without achieving the objectives of the flight. So that's these are the challenges, and this is how the training for the challenges are done. One needs to get used to is it's the laboratory which you transfer into once you're in space. It's not really big. It's just a cylinder. It's like living in a cylinder which is about 50 feet long. So there are two things. One is, of course, a privacy issue, and if you've got latent claustrophobic tendencies, then they come to the fore at that time. So the way you don't really train for that, you're weeded out at selection time. Depending on your performance, you're put into an isolation chamber for 72 hours without a watch, without any reading material, without television, without any kind of entertainment, whether it's a text or a paper or a book or something. You're just with your thoughts for 72 hours. And there's no outside light coming in, so you don't know whether it's day or night. And if you survive that, then that means that you are fit enough to be put into a can for longer periods of time and you can stay there. So that's how they weed out guys with latent claustrophobic tendencies. Talking now about today, if you look at what's happening to space exploration, the private sector has gotten into the act and it was inevitable, of course, because the government funding was drying up the world over. So many SOPs were given by governments everywhere, societies which were taking care of healthcare, and freebies were so much that the voters started asking, what's space exploration going to do to me? So therefore, funding became very difficult. It became more and more difficult for governments to find the money for exploration. So they had to open it to the private sector. Plus, the number of flights have gone up so much by pushing up satellites, which is of course a revenue earning method for various governments and agencies. So what began happening is that space debris has started building up, which yesterday Sandeep referred to, and that creates a lot of problems. The traffic congestion is quite like what's already happened in our metros, in the sense that even now to get into space, you want to make sure you don't hit anything on the way, because there is so much of debris orbiting the Earth right now. So that's one of the challenges which, going forward, and yet Sandeep had mentioned about Starlink, the number of satellites which we are using for ground positioning systems. So we are innovating, yes, we are adopting new methods of working to make life easy on Earth, and as usual we have not seen the further effects of these innovative strategies. So there is an accident waiting to happen. So that's one of the problems. The other challenges which we'll be facing the humans, you see, this is the very first time that human civilization is getting to leave planet Earth, and it's not going only to explore; it is going to colonize first the Moon and later Mars. And what this is going to do is that it'll throw up, especially Mars and further out, is the duration of the flight. There are going to be privacy issues for that long, because you can't build huge spaceships. You don't have the energy to do that, and the velocity of going from one planet to the other is limited by the speed of light. So you're going to be taking whatever time it takes now till you find a new way of propulsion. So till that is not found, you will have to stay cooped up for longer periods of time in the same cylinder which I had spoken to earlier. That's one. Two, no country, I believe, has the wherewithal or the money to do this kind of exploration by themselves. It is inevitable that countries will have to collaborate rather than compete with each other, so that they go forward together as a multinational crew for exploration of Mars and settling colonies on Mars and extract whatever riches and minerals which are there on these planets. Now, the problem again with that is if you have multinational crews, there are cultural issues. How teams will be formed from different countries, different cultures. How will you combine? And all of these different mix is going to be living in that metallic cylinder. So these are other challenges which we will have to overcome. So team selection will be there, and in any case, the question I usually ask is that if you're going to be flying to a place zillions of kilometers from planet Earth, and the crew is consisting of astronauts from different nations, does it make sense to stick to your narrow national identity? Would you like to reach there as Indians or Chinese or Americans or whatever? I think we need to be explorers from planet Earth. That is one. Secondly, I think given the state of our economy and given why conflict takes place on Earth, I believe that the time has come for, and there are UN resolutions, United Nations resolutions already signed by 90%, 95% of the countries of the world who are members of the United Nations, that whatever humanity gets out of space should be used for the rest of humanity on planet Earth. Now, whether that happens or not, if it happens, then it will reduce, it will not export seeds of conflict into outer space. But if you stick to your national identities, if you go to Moon, if you go to Mars and demarcate areas saying that this is my land, this is my territory, then whatever comes out of that, you will only use it for your use. And stronger nations will then do what they've done on Earth. So we've made such a mess of the Earth, environmentally, and our social norms are all over the place, and that is why conflict takes place. So either we sort those issues out before we colonize elsewhere. So the way I would like to put it is that why destroy heaven which is on earth and instead build far off hell somewhere else. So let's fix these problems here before we go and colonize other planets. And of course, that is, see, we are going nano in so many ways because of energy constraints of putting them up into orbit. So nano means you can take many more satellites, but their locations still have to be fixed in different places for them to work together as a networking system. So I don't know whether it's a big satellite or a small satellite, that will make a difference. Even a nano satellite, because at those speeds, orbital speeds, it just takes a small little nut or a bolt which can puncture the skin of your vehicle. So that is what is dangerous, and that's the pollution we need to clear up. You can't get the man out of exploration.
Out of loop you cannot totally get, but you can use a number of missions. You can actually, with the system and the
to have more interest in space science and astronomy, and we can have more better people and more astronauts in the future.
Today, on Earth, we learn various disciplines which can affect our life and make it easier. What is going to change now is that the territory in which you operate is expanding. So instead of Earth, so you will have to find out what are the different challenges in the different places that we are going to colonize. And based on that will throw up new subjects which you will need to master, to be productive and of use as part of the early settlers. So it's difficult now for me to say till we come to know what those challenges are. You may then go there and decide that it's very impossible with what is available there to replicate the environment which supports life, like on Earth. And even today, you may go to the moon, but to make a colony which is going to support life, and the only way you cannot change human physiology, suddenly we cannot start breathing carbon dioxide and saying you're fine. Of course, though there is a training ground in our metros for that kind of air.
So in one of your previous interviews, I saw that you had applied yogic breathing techniques in yoga techniques. When you were in space, it helped you breathe better, and it made you stronger when you were in space.
Well, I think you're probably referring to this yoga experiment which I carried out in space. The aim of that experiment was to find out whether the yogic system of training for spaceflight offers a better alternative than the Western system, because there has been a perennial problem of space sickness, and how do you ensure that does not affect the crew and make it less productive during a short flight. So I stopped training as per the Western system, and I trained as per the yogic system for about 6 months before the flight. And then they compared, whereas the Russians who went with me, they continued training by their system. Then our parameters were compared, but they found no difference. Now to see that, to say that this is a better or as good a system, you can't say that because there's not enough data. It's not statistically valid, the sample. Because I could have been one of those guys who wouldn't have fallen space sick at all. Not everybody gets air sickness while flying. So there are a few who are susceptible to it. Perhaps I was not one of those. World record is 427 days. So it was pretty easy for me to go through that particular experience. And don't forget that I was a uniformed person in the Indian Armed Forces, and we're used to a lot more. Comfort isn't something which we get everywhere we go. So that is, so I didn't really miss that. About God, I don't know the construct which has been given to us about God. It all depends on a very individual, how you interpret it, how you see it, whether or not it is a physical form, whether it's nebulous. But what I do believe is that your actions decide your destiny. Not so much. So if you live like the human being you have evolved into, then I think that's the way to live. And then you don't need God.
Thank you, sir.
India has charted its own course in space, right? It has never competed with anybody. India has only focused on space activity, which the returns of which are going to help the common people. And that is why India's space program has been unique thus far. It has been totally indigenous, and really hats off to India for having reached where it has reached. It has exploited space for a developing country, and it has helped our development. There are no two opinions about that. And I see no reason why India abandons this. And only thing which I can only see, join the dots as I've been seeing. And today you are finding the outreach which is being made by Prime Minister Modi, and I don't want to get into politics, okay? But the kind of outreach that is being made and his efforts in unifying in this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is just to explain the concept that till such time we don't share the meager resources of planet Earth, which are finite, it's not infinite. If we don't start doing that, then we can never attain peace. So I do believe that ISRO's further work, if you remember, ISRO has never sat on its discoveries. It has shared the data with whoever wants to share, and whoever wanted it. And I think we've been a good partner. We've never kept anything to ourselves, and we are good at training. And that is why I think ISRO will be a credible partner to, in the future, as I explained, because according to me, further space exploration cannot be done by individual countries. It will have to be done together. And therefore, ISRO is in a good position to shape policy, and it's already, I believe, found a place on the high table.
You have certainly inspired us as well as new generations. I will a few small announcements to make. So just picture. So there are photographs of when you were the squadron leader. This picture with Mrs. Indira Gandhi. By the way, in this museum, we also have a letter from Mrs. Indira Gandhi, a letter to Professor J.P. Narlikar, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. 1994, and it will be placed in a separate corner in. So this is the first picture. There is always each mission has a separate logo. So this was the mission that Salute 7, I think, was there. This is inside the I think Salute. So inside the Salute mission, and all this needs to be placed in the. This is also in college.
Orbiting planet Earth. And when I went and docked with it, there were 3 cosmonauts already, and they had used the Soyuz T-10, which is the transporter which takes cosmonauts into orbit. Then the transporter docks with the laboratory, and the 3 cosmonauts entered the laboratory. When we went in Soyuz T-11, and we docked with the opposite port, and we also got into the Salyut 7 laboratory. And while we were airborne, the space shuttle took off from then Cape Kennedy, and they came up with 5 astronauts. So that was the only time that 11 human beings were orbiting planet Earth at the same time. So when we left and finished our mission, we came back in T-10 because the Soyuz T-10 was the older capsule, and T-11 is what we went into. So we went to space in T-11 and came back in T-10.